Now, I mentioned the timing changes, and I think that's important. The 12 cases that the doctors will be doing for the RCE are of equal length. They're each 10 minutes. It's delivered over 3 sessions, and those 3 sessions are around 90 minutes each. They're telling all the students to expect up to 2 hours, up to 120 minutes, just in case of connection times and delays. But basically 3 sessions of 90 minutes. There'll be about 10 minutes between each case, which includes moving them between Zoom rooms and technical connections and things. So they're saying 5 minutes reading time per case plus some admin and waiting room time. So this is quite different to the other exam where you would do 14 cases back to back. So this is 4 at a time. Now you'll notice there's an optional day 4. What's happening with the exam this year, and I think this is actually common practice in clinical competency assessment, is that the 3 days of exams cover 12 cases. If students clearly have failed the 12 cases, then they're unsatisfactory. If students have clearly passed the 12 cases, then they're satisfactory. Students who are considered borderline will be brought in for day 4 to sit 4 more cases to gather more information and determine which side of the line that they fall. Now that day 4 is optional. They can choose not to sit day 4, but if they're borderline and they don't sit day 4, they will be failed. So while it's optional, basically anyone who's asked to come to day 4 would be crazy not to. This is actually similar to what we do at university level with OSCEs that are a 2-part OSCE, where students that are clearly competent, there's no point in bringing them in for additional stations. I think this is actually a really good thing, and this adds a degree of rigour to the exam, and I think it's bringing the college in line with academic standards and other assessment models. So this is a good step. So let's talk about the types of cases, because this is where I think we're going to see the significant difference compared to the previous exam. So there are 2 main scenarios, I suppose. One is where the candidate and the examiner will be interacting with each other, and the other is where the candidate and an actor will be interacting and the examiner will be observing. So in the first case, which will make up most of the cases, there'll either be candidate and examiner having a case-based discussion, the candidate and examiner having a case-based discussion with a candidate describing an examination or a procedure. They no longer will have to demonstrate an examination or procedure during the exam. And the third kind, where the candidate and examiner interacting, will be a critical appraisal case, a case-based discussion with reference to a research paper. The second type, which is what used to be the majority of the old OSCE, is the traditional role-playing scenarios that we're used to. And in this situation, there'll be a remote consultation with a standardized simulated patient, and the examiner will be observing. So this is the difference between the 2. So let's go through those case types in a little bit more detail. So the first, the case-based discussion, is where candidates are given a patient summary and background. There might be results or photos, and the questions will be delivered to the candidates verbally. So in their reading time, they'll have the case file, and then they might be asked to formulate a problem definition. They might be talk about differentials. They'll discuss investigations they would order and explain diagnostic management reasoning. They might be asked to talk about guidelines. This is basically the old Viva cases that used to occasionally pop up in the OSCE. This is probably going to be the lion's share of the cases in the new RCE. Now, occasionally that will actually vary and also include description of a physical examination or a procedure. So same kind of information given, same kind of reading time. However, they might be asked to talk through, this patient requires a cervical screening done, talk me through that procedure. Or we're going to remove the melanoma from this patient, talk me through the procedure. They won't obviously need to demonstrate that, but they will need to make it quite clear that they're competent and know exactly what steps need to be undertaken. The third one, which again could previously occur in the OSCE but didn't really happen very often, is a critical appraisal. And to be honest, talking to the registrars I'm working with, this is probably the one that scares them the most, particularly depending on where they were trained. For some of our doctors, they've never had any training in research methodology. So in the critical appraisal, The understanding that I have, and this comes direct from the college webinars, is that the candidates will be sent the research papers a couple of days before the exam. So they'll actually have some time to read them and analyse them. And then they'll be expected to answer a range of questions about how they might apply the research in their clinical practice, their interpretation of the research. They may be given a patient case and asked how that would apply to the patient case. So we may need to do a fair bit of work supporting our students on this because, as I said, people are pretty scared about this. And it has been theoretically possible in the past OSCE, but it never really appeared. I think it's very likely it's going to appear this time. The final case type, which is what we've discussed before, is the remote consultation with a simulated standardized patient. And this is basically the kind of role plays we've always done. It sounds like this won't involve the way that we've done it this time with the asking the examiner for findings necessarily. It sounds like the examiner is simply observing the interaction and the candidates are dealing with the patient with the examiner not taking a part in it. So it may be more detailed, but a snapshot of an examination, a snapshot of a consultation, breaking bad news, explaining results, those kind of things.